this one, we take our last trip out in the PANGA before we sell it to spearfish some of the wildest and some of my favorite oil platforms in all of the Gulf. We're going to be in crystal clear water with the possibility to see anything. Come along for it. We have an awesome day. This is Braden Dives. Possibly, very likely, our last spin ever in this PANGA today. It's going down. How you feeling about the last sin ever, Fisher?
It's bittersweet, but we're going to some of our favorite spots, so I can't think of a better way to finish the boat off than this.
One last ride, more than likely, in the PANGA. Boat is lined up to be sold in 2 days. So I think this is it. I'm gonna soak it in, reminisce, and hopefully have a good last trip with the OG rig right here. The boat we've been running the past 3 years, where it all started. Never gonna forget this boat. Made a lot of memories out of it. Got some awesome fish. It's opened the door for us to get out here. Gonna be sad to see it go, but like I've talked about, we're on to something really exciting for the future. So, yeah. We're sending it to some of our favorite rigs today. Deeper oil rigs. Should be clean blue, and there's really possibility for almost anything. We can see big African pompano, cubera, big cobia, definitely gonna see big mangrove snapper, could even see a wahoo. You never know. But yeah, I figured that would be the right way to close the PANGA chapter, this PANGA at least. We're gonna make the best of it. You guys stay tuned. It's gonna be a good day. All right. We've made it. Long boat ride, but we are here. We are actually going to be rocking a float line setup today. So I figured if I can get a float line with a heavy buoy with some stopping power, hopefully that'll... Oh my gosh!
Dude, I've been watching that dude splash for like
that?
20. It's a spinner.
Spinner? Huh.
That's where all our fish are going.
Yeah. Back to what I was saying though, if I can get something with some stopping power, then that'll save a big headache. Gets murky down there. And really with a reel, you can't put a whole lot of pressure on it whenever you're free diving on a dive, so. This, if we can keep it from tangling while we're swimming around and diving, should work pretty well. If I shot anything in the rig, ideally it's not going deeper than 100. And then if we shoot an African pompano or something, it's running out and we can just watch the float, let it run, not worry about our reel getting dumped or whatever. Oh, cobia right here. I don't know if that's big enough, but borderline. Cobia just swam up. There's a float out there. It's a Rife 3 atmosphere. This is a 75-foot float. Shout out to Neptonics for hooking us up. We will see if we could make it tight. I'd love to see that float tombstone, or at least skirting across the water. One last thing I guess I should mention, rocking a breakaway setup. All that is basically when I shoot, everything detaches from my gun and feeds to this float line. And then I still have my gun, nothing's attached to me or it. All right, let's rock. Real quick before we get into the water, today's video is sponsored by Navis Apparel. As y'all know, my favorite bamboo clothes to wear. This is what I wear in all the videos when we don't have the wetsuit on and just day to day. I love this stuff, could not recommend it enough. You can check their website, they have 365-star reviews. Right now they also have a up to 60% off warehouse sale, so it's a great time to get some new gear. These are clothes you're gonna really like wearing, and if you enjoy the channel and you wanna help support, getting Navis is a great way to do so. Supporting Navis is supporting me. They're a huge channel sponsor. All right, now back to the video. All right, here we go. Loading up the new big fish, big game setup here. We're rocking 3 16 mil bands, an 8mm spear, Dyneema shooting line, a tri-cut cable slip tip, and a breakaway float line system as I showed in the boat. And it's going to be a selective thrill fish kind of day. We had a good haul of meat yesterday, so we're only going to be targeting those trophy fish. I'm rigged out to land a big cubera if an opportunity presents itself and we're able to put a spear in it. Also, I'm looking out for African pompano. There's a really good chance for that, as well as big cobia. On top of a possibility for anything, but those are just the top of mind target fish. But for the most part, I'm just out to enjoy the last send in the PANGA and dive in this area. They completely removed a big platform by this one not long ago, so these rigs could be gone the next time we come back, for all I know. So just gonna enjoy it while we can and make the most of it. So that was a montage giving a lay of the land here. It truly is a wild area. It's hard to believe that they're allowed to blow up and rip these structures out with all this life. But here's my first drop, scoping everything out. checking down deeper in the rig and also outside. Here I spot a handful of kingfish cruising by way out.
I've seen one here with like he's got a mark on his face, like he's been hooked before.
Well, he's right here.
It's probably him. I've seen him right there when I dove with Hunter Falk.
You can see him.
You can just barely make it out in the video, but there's a small cubera about the size of the mangrove snapper down there, not the one I was talking about.
Right out here, open water, there's a good cubera.
So this cubera, the one Fisher saw on the outside, the bigger fish, I think was the one I had seen here. It had a distinct mark on its mouth that looked like it had been hooked before or something, but it was a much bigger fish. I'm guessing 50 pounds. I'd seen it twice in the past. I didn't shoot it though. One of the run-ins, it swam right up to me, really close. That was really cool. But here I got an amberjack that swam up for a brief moment, pretty curious. And then a shooter cobia. I was being really shy though. It just came up, checked us out, and went back down. Stayed really far out. Also had a handful of big spinners circling the outside of the rig throughout the dive here. And here's part of the struggle of rocking the float line. Mine was also getting hung up under the boat.
There's a nice ling that keeps swimming up, but every time I look, I turn around, it just darts away.
When using these float line setups, we have to stay on the outside of the rig on the down current side just to keep that line clear. So it's a bit limiting. We can't dive throughout the rig. We're stuck just to kind of this one side. But I was figuring, say, if there is a fish we can't really access to, the other guy can feed the float line. That way you can make your dive and steer clear from hang-ups. That would be the ideal way to go about it, at least. Just have them either jumble up the line and feed it, or just limit any resistance allowing you to dive. Or if it works, and what I was doing on a few dives is jumbling up my own float line myself and letting it go right before I dove. But yeah, kind of the way I'm going about the dives, I was just dropping down to about 50 feet and setting up, scoping down into the rig. I could see all the way to the murk, so I was just checking to see if anything would come up and out into visibility. And then I was looking out, hoping for African pompano on the outside. Also, I did want to mention, I didn't go really any deeper than 50 feet. 60 foot was the max, but with the 75-foot float line, you are a little limited on depth, especially when that current's kind of pulling that float. It creates a little bit of resistance, making it a little harder to dive down farther.
Mm.
And then here that cobia came back up, but I had just gotten back up from a dive, so I wasn't ready to take a stab at it. This was my next dive. I made a drop out here on the outside. Had 3 amberjack come up and circle me. Unfortunately, it isn't seasoned though. So I don't end up pulling the trigger here, pick the camera up and just film for a bit before we move spots. This place truly is a trip. I really just enjoy diving and filming it all. Fisher decides to shoot a mangrove here before we leave to test out his breakaway setup, make sure everything's working right. So we make a move. Here's my first dive at this spot. Just scanning, scoping on the outside of the rig here, and there you can make out a little cubera. You can really notice the difference between the mangroves there. You can tell how dark they look. And then not long after here, I take a look outside of the rig, and under my float, I noticed this cobia is just cruising up, all curious, looking at it. So I make a shallow drop here, kind of at an angle away from it to hopefully spark some curiosity and get it to come in, and it notices me and takes a beeline right in. I let it rip. Perfect setup there. That was really cool to see it kind of come up, and how it was checking out that float. That shot seemed to do some damage on it, but I let this fish kind of wear itself out a bit, go real slow and easy on it here. I noticed that slip tip hadn't really pulled all the way out. You can see that spear is still in the fish, so I'm not trying to horse it and possibly bend it there.
All right, well, not sure if the GoPro glitched or not there. It was being funky in the water. But we got a cobra. This was bizarre. I was over here on the outside of the rig and I just looked out up by the surface, and underneath my float was this thing swimming. It came up to check out that orange float, and I quickly made a dive, kind of slowly at an angle. It saw me and then it came and presented a perfect shot. Super awesome. Good fish too. Right here at the end of the day. Picture perfect. Might have bent my spear though. I couldn't get the slip tip to pull out or pull how it's supposed to deploy. Hopefully my spear is still straight. There it goes. That is what happens when you put a fish in, or a cobia rather, in the boat before you braid it. I'm a little hesitant on messing with the cobia in the water. Now, I usually prefer to go to the boat and then dispatch it, just because they're notorious for quote unquote waking up after you think they're worn out and just spazzing. So we're gonna braid this thing. Now I got the boat bloodied up. I'm gonna see if I can weed the rest of it out in the water. Thank you, buddy. Awesome way to wrap up the day diving. I was just stoked to dive. That right there is icing on the cake. Back in the water now. There's a big spinner shark right there. It's one of the bigger ones I've seen. And here is my next dive. I'm pretty limited to just this side of the rig over here. That current was kind of pumping, and if I tried to go in the rig at all, it would have been a headache. You'd have to have someone else feed that float line if you're going to even think about that. And here I was kind of eyeing on shooting one of these mangroves out of this big school. I think I was being a little bit too obvious there. And they were keeping a distance from me. Ideally, I'd go down and just set up, let them come in. But I wasn't too strung out on shooting one. Just if a gimme shot presented itself there while I was just cruising alongside the rig. I started chumming a bit. Here we had a bag of frozen stuff. I was diving down to try to get it past these cudas, but they followed me down and ended up eating just about everything I was dropping. I was trying to get it to sink deep and maybe draw something up. And then here I was trying to get a cuda on the little spear gun here to chum this as well. but no luck with that. And we decide to call it a day there.
Well, that is about all she wrote. Awesome, awesome day. Didn't shoot a ton of fish. We got a good cobia, but the views were enough. It was unbelievable. Well, yeah, last trip out of the PANGA, if everything goes through. It was a good one, had fun. But we are gonna roll back now.
So back at the cleaning table, unfortunately, the audio glitched for this entire segment cleaning up this cobia. So I'm just gonna voice it over and show how I like to clean these bigger fish. I've shown this quite a bit before, but if you're interested and or you just like seeing fish get cleaned, stay tuned. Here we are getting a quick measurement, as you can see right there. And here we go. So I explained that I like to partition the fish up before I fillet it. That way it just makes it a little bit easier, at least in my opinion, to clean the fish. You can clean it as one big fillet if you want. This is just the way I like to do it myself. So I'll cut a section out like that, and I'll cut down the backbone, run that knife down, get over the spine, run it down the other side, cut it off. And then I'll just repeat that, keep cutting sections till the whole side is done. And then once you have your whole fish quartered up, to skin it, I do it just like this. Cut around the bloodline there, and then just skin the little chunks off like this. This way, these pieces are already ready to go into the vacuum sealed bags, or however you're gonna seal the fish up. And once I go to cook the fish, if I don't cut that excess blood off, I'll cut it off before we cook it. But there you go. Cobia ready to go into the freezer, already in perfect sized chunks. Then the last thing, we didn't film it, but then just cut that collar or throat off and throw it on the grill. And that's all I've got for this one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember, hit that like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Till the next one.